Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, but also in the context of the most recent Fed FOMC meeting and what they discussed there and how it sort of relates to Bitcoin. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, earlier today, the Fed had their meeting and they hiked interest rates 50 basis points, which was the expectation. I think, as far as I can tell, I think part of the rally that you're seeing is coming somewhat from the Fed perhaps being a little bit more dovish than a lot of people thought they were going to be. Now, I often say the news doesn't matter, but the Fed does matter. And, it is true, the saying of don't fight the Fed. I mean, I think that does carry a lot of weight. And usually when the Fed is pumping money into the economy, it helps asset prices. And when we're going through a phase of, say, tightening, that is what can lead to a recession. So it all depends on how hard the landing or soft the landing the Fed is able to accomplish when going through this rate hiking schedule. So earlier today when they were meeting, one of the things that they mentioned, and it was right after they mentioned, I was watching the price charts live as they were talking about it. One of the things that the Fed mentioned is that the 75 basis point rate hikes is not even something they're considering. And I think market participants were sort of thinking that while even today they could have raised it by 75 basis points, but perhaps it'd be on the table in the future. And Powell just came out and said that's not really something they're actually considering, which is a bit more dovish than I think, maybe the market had already priced in. And upon that news, the markets have rallied a little bit here. Now, where does that actually put Bitcoin, though? Because it always, rallies are nice and all. Okay, we like ourselves a good Bitcoin rally. We'll take what we can get these days because what we can get has not really been that great for the last basically for the last half year at this point. I mean, we're in May, and since November, Bitcoin hasn't really seen that great of price action. But where are we? Okay, remember, even when you get these sort of pops, it doesn't mean a thing if it hasn't got that sting. And when I talk about that, what is the sting? It means getting back above the bull market support band, and then furthermore holding it as support. And you can see that to some degree, Bitcoin is getting squeezed here, right? We're getting squeezed. We go up and we test that the 20-week SMA, the 21-week EMA, that bull market support band multiple weeks, right? It's just like a constant test. And then we come down to the bottom of this range. And then technically, we're still putting in higher lows, right? So, technically speaking, Bitcoin is putting in higher lows. But also, technically speaking, anytime we get rallies, we sort of just get sold off right before the bull market support band or right at it. There was one time where we rallied above it, but we did not see any follow through like we had seen back in August, okay? And like we had seen previously in 2020. We did not really see that follow through. So it doesn't mean anything if we can't get back above those levels. So, in the event of a short term sustained bounce, the levels that we'd like to get back above, as I've said before, are 41.4 and 42.5. 41.4 and 42.5. That's where we'd like to see Bitcoin get back above. Until then, we're just doing the same thing we've done for the last several months. In fact, I believe we've been in this range longer than the downtrend. Okay, if you look at the downtrend from when we first started moving down, that was 11 weeks. And from this sort of bottom over here, you could argue that we've now been in this one for 14 weeks. So we've actually been sort of in this range longer than this initial downtrend lasted. Now, the thing is at this point, Bitcoin is getting squeezed somewhat between this sort of overhanging resistance, the looming resistance level of the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA, and the dubiously drawn trend line of the technically higher lows. So it seems like we're coming up to some type of a crescendo here, sometime in the next few weeks. But you can see that, I mean, if we were to sort of extrapolate the 20-week SMA, they're ultimately going to meet probably sometime in June. Now, one thing to consider with the 20-week is that it's not actually going to take that long for it to start moving higher, especially if the price comes back up, because if the price moves back up to the bull market support band, while this price starts to move down this way, you might actually see the 20-week SMA level off a little bit. But I will say, when it comes to not fighting the Fed, I still think that, as the Fed continues to raise interest rates and whatnot throughout the year, and we deal with them rolling over the balance sheet and ultimately fighting inflation, I still think we have, fairly choppy months ahead of us. Um, and I mean, I don't say that lightly. I understand that we'd all like to see Bitcoin put in new all-time highs, but we also understand that, not fighting the Fed is generally something you don't want to do. Or not fighting the Fed is generally decent advice. So in the short term, it's always hard to say what's going to happen. Perhaps we'll see that rally. It is funny because we just had 5 weekly red candles, and I know on some exchanges we've had 6 before, but on this one I don't think we've had 6, and so this is 5 in a row. If we ended up closing this one in the green, we'll actually finally break that downtrend. But I will say, don't lose sight of whatever strategy you're following. Remember that we still likely have many more choppy months to come. Okay, we got a lot to prove for us to actually really start to look bullish here. And furthermore, assuming we can get back above the bull market support band, don't forget there's that 200-day that we got handily rejected off of back in late March. And that is currently at 46.8. When we got rejected off of it, it was actually at around 48.3. Now it's actually at around 46.8. The reason why it's somewhat interesting is because if we do get a rally back above the 20-week at some point, that is always the next level to watch, because oftentimes in bear markets, you'll see Bitcoin get rejected off the 200-day moving average, even if it sometimes pokes its head above the bull market support band. So I would argue that it's worth at least following where the 200-day SMA is. You can see it starting to move down somewhat rapidly, and I guess the reason is if you go back 200 days, we're now no longer including, we're essentially getting rid of some of the prices over here for some of the ones over here, and so it's slowly starting to not even include these moves to higher prices, and then eventually it'll just start to come down relatively quickly. So I think that the best course of action, as far as I can tell, is just to remain relatively cautious, to stick with whatever strategy you're doing, in terms of how you're navigating Bitcoin, and to just be patient and wait to see if we can actually get back above the 20-week SMA, and then furthermore hold it as support. Until then, we understand sort of the overhead resistance levels are still looming above us, and namely that is the 20-week SMA, the 21-week EMA, and of course the 200-day moving average. So let's see if we can get back above it. As I've said before, my expectations have been tempered for the next couple of months, just because it's definitely, fighting the Fed is a difficult game to play. But I think to some degree they came out today a little bit more dovish than people were thinking, because I know some people were sort of assuming that we would see some 75 basis point rate hikes, maybe not this month, but as some people thought this month, but especially in future months. And for Powell to just come out and say that it's not even something they're considering, I think has got risk on assets getting some type of relief. So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out intothecryptoverse.com for Into the Cryptoverse Premium. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.